You're listening to the Connecticut Real Estate Edge podcast, your source for tips and tricks on building wealth through real estate in Connecticut. You will get the best techniques from leading local experts in real estate and lending. Now, here's your host, Robert Weinberg.
Today, we have an incredibly special guest with us whose journey in real estate is nothing short of inspiring. Ashley Kehr is a seasoned real estate investor, author, and an educator who's built a pretty impressive portfolio, as we'll be discussing. And she manages over 200 residential and commercial properties. She's a master in creative finance, leveraging partnerships, and building efficient systems to scale her business. And another great thing about Ashley, she's actually the co-host of the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Rookie podcast, where she educates and inspires investors every single week, as well as an entrepreneur. As we'll be discussing, she started a wine and liquor store in 2020, and she's a mom raising 3 boys on her farm in Buffalo, New York. So today we're going to be diving into Ashley's story and the lessons that she's learned and the strategies that she used to have incredible success. Let's welcome Ashley Kehr to the show. Ashley, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's kick off here and not waste any time. Tell us a little about your first rental property that you bought in 2014, what drew you to real estate, and what lessons did you learn from that first property?
I was working as a property manager at the time, and so I saw the power of real estate by working for this one investor. And so I ended up partnering with his son on our very, very first deal together. And it was actually his first rental property too. And we bought a duplex. We bought it right in the market where I was a manager. So I was very comfortable with the management of the property, what we could run it for, how to manage the rehab, because I'd been rehabbing some of the apartments that I was managing. So that was kind of, I brought the skill set, the experience, and then he brought the capital to the deal. And definitely a big lesson in that is a positive lesson that I gave him a lot of equity into the deal. Like I would never do the same structure as I did then, but also looking back, it's what got me started and also made him trust me. And we still do deals together today, over 10 years later. So that was like a big lesson as to something that's okay to do is you don't have to maximize every profit, every penny, that sometimes it's okay to give up equity, to give up profit to get into that first deal. And then with the rehab, we definitely didn't have enough in reserves for what we expected. And I had to kind of tap into the little tiny bit of life savings that I had to cover the rehab on that property. But overall, it ended up being a great deal. In the end, we sold it for a lot more than we had paid for it. We held on to it for, I think, 7 years. It cash flowed a little bit. I did make a mistake when I analyzed the deal initially, and that was I did not account for snow removal, which this property is located in Buffalo, New York. So it's pretty much guaranteed you're going to have to pay for snow removal for a property. And it didn't kill our cash flow, but it definitely did hurt it and take away a chunk of that cash flow. So that was another mistake I had made.
Yeah, I think a lot of early and first-time investors will resonate with a lot of what you said because everyone makes mistakes, right? Especially on your first couple deals. So owning it, understanding what you did wrong, and then learning from it, like that's just part of the game, right? You're never going to make that mistake again when it comes to the snow removal or the expenses. And I think just in general, a lot of real estate investors underestimate those expenses, right? Of what it's going to take to maintain a property, what's it going to take to hold a property for 1 year, let alone, 7, 10, or longer. So that's really important. So now fast forwarding from that first property, you've scaled. Now I believe you're over 40 doors that you own right now directly, right? So what was the strategy specifically around partnerships? Because getting from one property to 40 in a relatively like a couple year timeline like you've done, like that's not the norm, right? So I know you've embraced partnerships and that's been one of your keys to success. Can you talk a little about how partnerships have played a role and, what you'd recommend to people looking to use a similar strategy to scale their portfolio?
Yeah, so the investor I started out with, he had capital, so we used his savings to purchase the first property. Then he actually went and got a home equity loan on his property, and that's how we bought the second one. And then we actually did a portfolio loan on those first two properties and used that cash then to purchase the third property. And at that time, I was doing new construction on my primary residence, and I had turned my old primary residence into a rental, and it had been owned free and clear. So I actually went and got a line of credit on that. And I met another investor who I started partnering with, and he went and got a line of credit on a property that he had, and we used that line of credit to kind of fuel more deals. So at the time, I was two partners. Then at that time, I had started to save money. I'd paid down all of my debt. We had farm equipment at the time. I had student loans, luckily no credit card debt, but I used my cash flow and from my W-2 income of a property manager to basically just pay down my debt as fast as possible. And then that's when began to save to actually start feeling comfortable having reserves, making down payments on properties that I could own on my own. So as time has gone on, I've really taken on three main partners, and then I've purchased properties myself throughout that route. But a lot of it has really been understanding how to tap into equity into properties, how to buy under market value. So they're already appraising more than what you're purchasing them for, and moving money around as to where can I find money now? Okay, I can get a line of credit on this property, things like that. So right now, a lot of my purchases are made from two lines of credit that I have that cover three rental properties that are paid off that have the lines of credit on it.
I love it. I think that a lot of investors they don't really implement other people's money into their
Mhm.
strategy early on. That's something that you've done. Obviously, it's worked, right? But when I talk about other people's money, even partnering, it may not be another investor. Maybe it is the bank that's going to
Mhm.
give you that home equity line of credit or home equity loan against a property that you already have. And that can be your down payment. That can be your reserve. That can be the capital that you need. I love how you've combined both personal partnerships with lines of credit, with financial, right? Because you might know somebody that doesn't really want to get their hands dirty with real estate, but they do have access to a lot of capital, right? And there's partnerships that you can set up, like you've done, that can allow you to get a piece of that action, allow you to tap into their equity and bring them on as a partner, and maybe like push you three or four steps along, because think about how long it would have taken you if you didn't have any partners and you
Oh
had to
yeah, I
literally
can't
do
even
it.
imagine when I've actually taken action on getting my first rental besides my old primary residence. It definitely would have been a long time. And I think part of that was just fear. Like I was scared to do it to myself. Not only did I not have the capital, but I wanted that kind of security of having a partner that if something went wrong, I could kind of go through it with them. And how you were talking about, finding someone who maybe doesn't have the time or the knowledge to actually get into a deal. That's exactly my first partner. Even today, he's still he probably can't even tell you the addresses of our properties, to be honest. He's extremely passive, um, but he's continuously funneling capital and putting them into our deals.
Yeah, so it's not only about what you know, but it's about who you know. And who
Hmm.
do you need to know, right? If you're speaking to someone, like who do they know that you need to know? Maybe it's a passive investor. Maybe it's someone who's retired that has money to put. Like there's all these different places. And right now, people want to put money to work. There's a lot of liquid capital out there right now in the market. A lot of the money in the current economy has been created just in the last few years. And that money needs a place, right? So, real estate, of course, is a great place to be putting it. So, I would really encourage anyone to latch on and at least give an attempt to do something similar, because it's a lot easier than you think it is. And if you don't ask, you will fail. That's for sure. So
Yeah.
go out there and ask for favors and discuss things and create these partnerships. And don't be afraid to do it early on, like you've done in your first few properties. You don't have to wait till you have five or 10 under the belt. So, on the vein of creative finance, I want to discuss that for a second because I know you've done a lot of creative financing on your deals. If you can just maybe pick out one example of a deal that you've done creative financing and the strategy you've used and how that's made a deal possible. Because I think a lot of people don't think about creative financing, don't understand it, and don't realize how they can implement it.
Sure, I can go over a mixed use 5 unit commercial building that I purchased
Absolutely.
last
Yeah.
year. So this property was sat on the market for over a year. It was listed with three different agents. And my agent, when it went on the market for the third time, my agent sent it to me and was like, "What do you think of this?" And I said, "Actually, I've seen it before. This is the third time it's been listed." And she's like, "Let's just go look at it." So we went and looked at it, and it was one commercial unit on the first floor and four residential in the upstairs. So this property, I think they wanted like 260,000 for it. And so I put together a seller financing offer, and it was for them to do seller financing at 3.5%. I would put, I think it was $20,000 down, and then they would finance it. The rest I offered 225,000 to, so 205,000. They would do seller financing for 4 years, and then it would be a balloon payment after those 4 years. So that 4 years would give me enough time to turn the property into what I wanted it to be so that I could go ahead, get it appraised and refinance, and a bank would actually finance the property. As is the first floor, the commercial part is completely gutted. They did a
Okay.
lot of work to the foundation, things like that, but they never actually finished the commercial unit. The four apartments upstairs, kind of the kitchens had been remodeled, but not really a lot of the stuff. So there was two that were currently occupied and two vacant, and one had just been an eviction. So I knew they had like a pain point of just evicting someone who, when we went and looked at it, the eviction notice was still on the door. So they ended up accepting our offer as is. So 3.5% interest for the next 4 years. I'm definitely not refinancing early. Um, so we ended up going in and we spent about $5,000 on the 2 units, got them fixed up and got them rented right away. So even with doing nothing with the first floor, not having it rented, the property is already cash flowing. So now we're just waiting to probably about 2.5 years in. So we got like another year or so. Then we're going to go ahead and finish the bottom floor before we go and refinance. So that way we're not having all the capital we're going to put into it sitting there for 4 years and
Right.
then refinancing. So we're going to wait till the end since the property is, supporting itself as is right now with just the residential units. But that was the thing, is this property had been listed for over a year and nobody had ever offered this person seller financing. And I did my research and I looked and made sure there was no mortgage on the property, things like that. They
Mhm.
were an older couple. I even, looked them up, saw their address, saw where they live. And like, it wasn't, you know, um, awful property that was in disrepair where they needed a huge cash infusion, things like that. So I try and do as much research as I can about the person to see if that's something they're interested in. And then I also did a bank financing offer on the property, but I did it as a much lower purchase price. I think I did it like 180,000. And I wasn't even sure if the bank would actually finance that property because of the first floor being,
Mhm.
completely gutted and not put together. So they definitely took the seller financing offer, and so we have that property now.
So then let me make sure I understand. The bank financing offer was there, but you didn't need it in the end, or did you
Correct.
utilize it?
I put in two offers. So I always like to submit two offers, whether maybe one's a cash offer, one's
Mhm.
seller financing, one's a bank offer. And I submit those. So it's up to the seller. It's their decision. Do they want the higher purchase price and accept the seller financing? Do they want the bank offer? Do they want the cash offer, but it's way lower? So I always make at least two offers if I want the creative financing, and I let them decide to make it more like it's their decision that they're choosing, and I'm not saying, oh, I'll only buy it as this and forcing that upon them. Obviously, whatever offer I want them to choose, I make that way more favorable.
Right, right. Okay. So in the end, they chose the seller financing offer. You didn't need any bank financing, and now you're in the deal. with the seller financing with a couple years to go, right?
Yes.
So I love a lot of the stuff that you said there. Some of the little nuggets I picked up was, first of all, you didn't like have a real estate pro or somebody else doing your dirty work. You did your own research. You looked up the property. You looked at the data. You figured out if there was a mortgage on it, and then came up with your strategy, right? Came up with your offer. So that's important because I know a lot of people now today, they want to like third party everything, right? So like do
Yeah.
none of the work yourself, but you're going to miss out on a deal like this because a realtor isn't going to go into all of this detail that you're doing with the public records and all that. This was a diamond in the rough. Like somebody could have come in and done what you did 6 months earlier, right? They just didn't.
Yeah, nobody had
So,
offered him seller financing. So, like, one thing to, if you're having trouble finding deals, is go onto the MLS, go onto Zillow, and set the filter from newest listings to oldest, and then start on the very last page and look at these listings that have been sitting a long time and start making those seller financing offers or lower offers because those properties has been sitting for so long. I have a property right now that I'm trying to sell. It's a vacant land with an old building on it, and we had bought it for I think 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and we just did nothing with it. So we're like, okay, let's just sell it now. And we've had it sitting for 2 months now. We probably had over the 2 months, we probably had 10 showings, but zero offers. We have it listed at 139,000. We would take probably 90,000, but nobody has made a single offer on this property. And it's like, look, being on the buyer's end of this, it's just like nobody's, wants to make any kind of offer where we would, significantly decrease the price to get rid of this property.
mhm.
So we're just kind of waiting for anybody to make an offer at this point. But there are other sellers like me out there that are just waiting for somebody to make an offer, no matter what
No,
it
I
is.
agree. I call it throwing your hat in the ring. A lot of
Mhm.
people don't do that, especially first time buyers, first time investors. Understandably, it's scary, right? You're making a big investment. Nobody's discounting that. But what I find is my most successful clients take just very decisive action. So, like, they're not putting one offer in, they're putting three, four, five offers in like the course of a week. Like, they are buying a property one way or another, and they're getting aggressive with it. And sometimes it'll be like a low ball offer they never thought would get accepted, and it does, or they're
Yeah.
able to work out creative strategy like you've done. And I don't care what the economy is doing, interest rates or the real estate market, there are opportunities everywhere, even right now. And a lot of people are finding them, but they are harder to find. Takes more time, takes more due diligence, that sort of thing. So, shifting our discussion over to talking about rentals, short term, mid term, long term. I know you've had a lot of experience. So, when you're looking at a property, right, and you're trying to figure out what's the game plan, what's the strategy, what do you look for to figure out if it's going to be like a short term rental, a mid-term, or a long-term rental, like a year or longer type of rental situation? Because obviously profits can fluctuate, geography, right? So what do you really look at to figure that strategy out, and at what point?
Yeah, so my specialty, my niche is definitely long-term rentals.
Okay.
But in the last couple of years, I've actually purchased more short-term rentals than I have long-term rentals as far as property-wise, but not unit count. And I did have two Airbnbs that were arbitrage. So I was managing a 40-unit apartment complex, and inside there, I rented two of the apartments and I had them listed on Airbnb, and I would do arbitrage with them. We started the first one in 2018 and it did amazing. It was us and one other Airbnb in that
Mm-hmm.
that town, that market. So we ended up just closing them down in December because the market is just saturated now in that area with Airbnbs, and we're nothing special. We're an apartment. We're an
Right.
affordable apartment. We ended up, making a couple $100s a month on them. One, we strictly did midterm rentals, and that did very well for a while. And that cash flowed like $1,500 a month. And then it just got that there was, 2 months of vacancy. So then we started to alternate it where if there was nothing upcoming for a midterm rental, we would put it short term and see what we could get. And so it ended up just being more of a hassle. And we decided we strictly wanted to focus on our cabins. So we have 3 cabins, well, 2 cabins, 1 cottage, basically. And we've decided that we're going to focus more on not just more units, but really maximizing the daily rate that we can get and the experience giving back and the amenities that are happening. So we have an A-frame, and then we have another cabin that's located by a pond, and there's goats on the property, things like that. And so we are continuously looking as to how can we create this guest experience even better. So on the podcast, we had a guest who talked about she writes handwritten notes. She just writes a whole stack of them. The cleaner leaves them, whatever. So we started little things like that. The lower cabin is super close to our house. So like if I have time before someone checks in, I go in and I fresh flowers and put them in there. So we do these nice little things to kind of maximize our short-term rentals, but we really don't see ourselves adding too many more, growing too big with that, just because we just want to have less overhead by having less units and really maximizing that daily rate.
Okay, yeah. So really, it's definitely on a case by case, right? For sure. Some properties are more in tune with a short-term rental. Others, there may not be any option for it. It's just not a market, right? That would put people in a short-term rental, depending on what part of the country you're in, right? So, yeah, that makes total sense. Now, as far as property management, you touched on that. So I know you manage a lot of properties. You specifically manage properties for a specific individual, right? Or a specific portfolio that has all these properties. So you're not taking outside properties. They're all in this investor's portfolio. But with your experience overseeing such a large portfolio, talk about the systems and processes for the property management when you have so many properties, right? Like, are there specific software tools you're using and processes that you implement on every one that make it easier? And what are those tools?
Yeah, so another investor who didn't want to use a third-party property management company anymore, and I didn't want to either. We decided to pool together and we started our own property management company where he was more passive and I was actually the operations of it. So he put in like the startup capital we needed to put all these operations and systems in place. So we use AppFolio, which is a property management software. We use their call center service, which is a added on feature where we have a dispatch number for people to call into maintenance, or they'll actually, if someone submits it online, they take care of it. They send it to our preferred vendors based on what the situation is. Or if it's a, emergency and our handyman, they're the ones that actually call it. So that was like a big thing because I used to manage all these properties myself with a little bit of help as far as like the payables and receivables. And then we had outsourced a third-party property management. And I just didn't want to go back to where I was doing everything. So I was super diligent on how to make this a system, and I did not have to work in the business. So adding that call center was a big thing. We then got a virtual assistant who works from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday that handles all tenant communication. She does anything on the back end that needs to be done. So when a work order is complete by the maintenance person, she goes in, gets it ready to, if we need to bill for it, whatever happens with that, she enters all our mail. We have a virtual mailbox. So all of our mail is scanned in. She takes it. She either files it if it needs to go into our drive storage. She adds it as a payable into AppFolio. AppFolio, I really like it because the bookkeeping can be integrated into it and you can actually pay bills directly out of it. So she handles all of that kind of accounting. We do have an accountant that does come in and do the bank reconciliations every month, but there is just so much that can be done remotely. And then we do have a leasing agent. So through AppFolio, you can actually set your showing availability. So when a new unit comes up, she's notified of it. The pictures are put up, the listing is created, and then she sets when she's available. People can go onto our website, pick what day they want to show at what time based on her availability. She gets a text, you have a showing scheduled. She shows up, meets them, does the showing. And then the only other time she comes to the property is to move them in and actually physically hand them the keys. The lease is being signed electronically online. Their application is being done online. So there's very little, like basically my main job was the decision on the security deposit. So the maintenance guy would tell me what the damage was, if any, to the apartment. And the virtual assistant would say, this is what their, security deposit was. And I would go through our list and I would verify, okay, this is what we're going to charge them for. And then I would send them the notice saying, this is what we're taking on to security deposit or the refund their security deposit. That was basically the only thing that I had oversight over that my job was. So really like taking the time to build out those systems and processes. We did hire a consultant from Upwork that we wanted somebody who was super experienced in Appfolio. And we said, we want you to come in and write all our SOPs. So she worked one-on-one with the virtual assistant and she already had a lot of these systems put together. So she would already kind of have it. And then we would just tailor it a little bit. So it was more specific to what we wanted to do. And now we have this whole folder of just every SOP of how to pay a bill, how to move in someone in, how to move them out, things like that. So we have this whole handbook available, and that has really made a big difference.
Yeah, I love how you've automated everything in your business, really, in the property management and outsourced, the third party and the fact that they take care of a lot of the day to day. So that's great. So if you were to do it all over again for the property management piece, and if you're talking to someone that was starting their own property management gig, right, where they're going to manage someone else's properties or a bunch of their own, but what's like one big thing that you would do again differently if you started that again from scratch?
I would say hire a virtual assistant right away. Like if you only have one or two units, then you may not need that.
Mhm.
But getting a virtual assistant involved right when you're setting up the property management software, right when you're onboarding the tenants, it really helps to get them involved in the whole process so that they know how to do everything and they can start writing your SOPs for you and they can start figuring it out. My virtual assistant, she's from the Philippines, and now she just like will message me and she will say, hey, there's like a break in the system. This is what I think we should do. Can I go ahead and do it? And I'll be like, yes. So she's like taking initiative on stuff, and like finding an employee who wants to take initiative and like get things done is actually very hard to find. So giving her that freedom to actually
Mhm.
do those things has really helped. There's two virtual assistant companies I recommend. One is Scale Virtually. The only thing with them is usually they have to hire someone full time. So
Mhm.
there's also Virtual Property Management Solutions, vpmsolutions.com. And you just post a job description. I hire someone who works like 2 to 3 hours a week to do a couple different things. So you can still have a virtual assistant and pay them an hour a week to
Mhm.
do something. You don't need to hire someone full time. And that's like one of the really great things. And I think each of them are paid between $10 and $11 an hour.
Yeah, getting someone involved early on, I definitely see the benefit of that for sure.
Mhm.
And just to kind of give our listeners a little bit of a foundation on the property management, I know you manage a lot of units, right? But my story, I only have a property manager for one unit. Like I have
Mhm.
a single family home in Clayton, North Carolina. I've had it rented out since 2009, and I've only been there one time since 2009. And it was just to pick up some old furniture and stuff I had. So passive investing is possible with the property manager. My property manager uses all the software and has all the vendors and stuff that you're talking about, but you don't need a portfolio, I guess is what I'm saying. You don't need 10 units to get a
Mm-mm.
property manager. You don't need 5 units. You can buy a property out of state and have someone manage it, but it's all about your team, right? It's not set it and forget it the first few years. You need to make sure you have a reliable manager. You have someone that knows what they're doing and has set that foundation up for success, right? I've been lucky in that regard, but I've heard plenty of stories of people that get a bad property manager, someone that's not responsive and all that. Just like anything else, like a realtor or mortgage pro, like you need to vet the person out that you're dealing with, make sure they have that reputation, the reviews. You don't want a property manager who started last week. I want someone boots on the ground who's managing multiple properties in the general area, right? Because then they have the scale to be able to, even if you're only giving them one property to manage, I want to know they've got dozens of others too from other people, right? In that general vicinity, that can help out a lot too. So don't not do property management just because you don't think you're big enough. Because again, I did it with one unit and still do to this day. So that's huge. Now, switching gears here with you, Ashley, I want to talk about your books real quick because you published two amazing books. The first one is Real Estate Rookie. So we don't have time to give the whole synopsis and all that, but in Real Estate Rookie, what was it that inspired you to write that book? And what's one big takeaway for someone who, hasn't read it, right? Like, what's one big epiphany that you talk about in there? Maybe it'll encourage people to go read the whole thing.
I think what inspired me to write it is that I saw a lot of people struggling with where to start and then what steps to take. So there's so much free information on the internet of how to invest in real estate. You don't need to pay a guru. You don't need to join a course. You can learn all of it for free. But the hard part is to what step do I do next? What happens now? So I basically put it into an action plan of like, okay, you set your goals, you figure out your why, you do market analysis, you do deal analysis, what happens when you put it under contract, all of these things in order that you can follow. They're basically chapter by chapter. These are the steps you can do to get your first property in 90 days or your next property. And so that was the big thing. It was like, I just wanted something I can point people to is to like follow this plan to get the deal. And then, each section you can go on the internet and you can find more and more information there is. And I think one of the biggest things to learn in this book is that anybody can do this. And I tried to like simplify it as much as possible. Like I'm still very much a rookie investor in so many realms. So there's so many things in investing that I have not done. So I tried to simplify this so that, no matter what strategy you want to do, this is a basic outline of how to get your first deal. And I think that really should be the takeaway is that you can do this, anybody can do this. And that should be your epiphany that you now have the confidence. And I did a rookie boot camp too, which is actually based off the book, where I wanted everybody after the 90 days to feel confident and motivated that they can get their first deal.
Awesome, awesome. I love that. And the second book you did, Real Estate Partnerships, obviously that was an evolution, right, of what you were doing. So I assume what led you to write that was that you were now changing your strategy and doing more partnerships in your deals, right? And being able to do that. Can you talk about that? And are my observations correct, or what led you to read that? And then huge takeaway from that book for everyone.
Yeah, actually, I had done all my partnerships before I wrote that book. I just wrote it, I think, 2 years ago. So I haven't had any new partners since then. So it is basically the history of my partnership, but I co-authored it with my podcast co-host, Tony J. Robinson. So we took a mix, like we had very different partnerships. Like I used LLCs and he used joint ventures. So we thought just like a collaboration of like, there's so many different ways to actually do a partnership. Let's put it all together into this book. And so we go through the steps of like, why do you need a partner? Do you even need one? How do you find a partner? How should you structure a partnership? Because that was a question we got all the time is how should I structure it? And you can't just say, oh, do this and do that. Like structuring a partnership can go so many different ways. As long as it's legal, you could literally do anything you want. I could give you $100,000. You go buy $100,000 house with that. And you could say you own 1%. That could be the partnership. That's how it could be structured. Right. So we talk about like how to negotiate that, things like that. And then just like when you're drawing up the operating agreement, how to protect yourself, how the other person should be protected, what are exit strategies to put into place. So we try to help you like ease that fear of like, I don't want to get into a bad partnership. What are ways that I can protect myself from that happening?
I love what you're talking about on the legal part with the partnerships, because we've talked on this show about real estate crowdfunding and syndications, right? And getting involved with partnerships when it comes to real estate. And the legal part is the most difficult part to understand, because it's like you can do all this and have this great deal, but the proof's in the paperwork. Like that's where the money's going to be made or lost or whatever. So understanding that part is huge. And I would say to people, even if you're not looking to direct invest, get fluent on how to read agreements, get fluent on the legal part, get fluent on creating your own partnerships in real estate, because you're never going to do a deal alone. Like to do all your deals alone. No, there's always partners, right? There's just different types of partners in the transaction and what role that they play, right? So I think there's value in that book of real estate partnerships, even for someone not looking to direct invest, just that wants to get a little more fluent on all these creative ways, right, to buy, sell, and finance real estate. So I love that. Now, as we wrap up, I just want to touch on the podcast that you're a part of, which is the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Rookie podcast. So if you can maybe just pick out like one really cool story about that podcast, maybe a guest that you brought on or a topic that you talked about that's just really maybe outside of the box and could provide value for our listeners.
Yeah, actually, yesterday, so this is being recorded on January 21st, so released on January 20th. You can go to our YouTube channel at Real Estate Rookie. We interviewed Laura Sides, and she's full, high of energy, she's so inspiring, but she's a mom and she was a teacher, and she decided she wanted to get into real estate, and she went to take her garbage out, and her neighbor said, I need to sell my house and move to Florida. And she said, I'll buy it. She printed off a contract off her computer, took it over, they signed it, and then she ended up doing the rehab on this house in 6 weeks. And then she ended up with $100,000 profit from this property in 6 weeks. And that was her first deal. And she's gone on to flip condos now in her market. But it was just a really inspiring story. And, she didn't have systems in place. She didn't know what she was doing. She just knew she had to take action. She's like, I got contractors in and out of there. I was making phone calls. I was doing whatever it took. So her episode really shows the hard value of putting in that work and not giving up.
And right place, right time. Sometimes opportunity comes, you need to be ready to act. She
Yeah.
could have just told her neighbor, oh, good luck, or hey, maybe I know someone who'd buy it. But no, she had that entrepreneurial mindset to go get it and like capitalize on the opportunity. So that's a phenomenal story
Yeah.
there for sure. Now, in addition to the real estate stuff, you actually ventured out and started or created a wine and liquor shop, right? And I know that that's related to a property that you own. So can you talk a little about the story there? What motivated you to diversify outside of real estate? And how do you balance like the liquor store with the real estate and all the stuff you have going on as a mom too, right?
Yeah, so the liquor store, we have a manager, so it's pretty passive for me. She kind of takes care of everything. We had an issue with our credit card machine. She lets us know, she takes care of it, calls the company, makes sure everything happens. So there's not a lot that I'm involved in with that. I own 60%. I have another partner who owns 40%. We own the building together. So we had bought it right before COVID, and it ended up working out perfectly because we had all of COVID to, actually go ahead and remodel the building. So we had nowhere else to be. So we spent the whole time remodeling that property. And then we ended up opening a wine and liquor store because the other investor I'd worked for previously as a property manager, he owned one. And I was like, you know what? This is like a cash cow. I want one. So I did my research. I hired a liquor license broker, and we ended up putting the liquor store in one of the units. The real success of this story is the building, the purchase of the building. I looked at the building in 2018, and they wanted 90,000 for it. And I just didn't think it was worth it. I didn't know what I would do with it, etc. It's 2 commercial units, 2 residential, needed complete rehab. So then 2 years later, they approached me and said, we really need to sell this and stuff. And they said, how about 60,000 and you take this duplex that we have too? So I looked at the duplex and I was like, no, I really don't need it or want it. And I said, the roof is really bad. And they said, okay, 40,000. I said, okay, I'll take both buildings. So it was a 4-unit and a duplex for 40,000. I still didn't want this duplex. So I wholesaled the duplex to another investor for $20,000. So now I have this 4-unit building that I bought for $20,000. We put, I think was all in, we were about 90,000 into this property and around 100,000, say. And it ended up appraising for $220,000 once we were all done with the rehab. So we had created over $100,000 in equity in this property. And that was like so exciting for us.
Right place, right time. You took an opportunity. You had the real estate. Why not turn it into a cash cow, right? Another business. So I love that. Now, Ashley, you're busy. So I want to thank you for taking the time out because we're unfortunately at our time. It feels like we could talk for another hour, but your journey is incredible. The expertise, everything that you've done, it's just a testament to the power of perseverance, creativity, and most importantly, building the right partnerships. That's what I've heard. And literally everything that you've talked about today is that you really haven't done it alone. You've had other people to partner with on all aspects of your real estate business. And for those who are listening, if you're just starting out in real estate, you're looking to take your portfolio to the next level, use Ashley as a resource. Her book, Real Estate Rookie and Real Estate Partnerships, you can find online. Also her podcast, The Bigger Pockets Real Estate Rookie Podcast. Amazing insights on there. Definitely check that out. And I know, Ashley, they can follow you on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. It's at Wealth from Rentals. Is that the right handle there?
Yep.
Okay, so right. Wealth from Rentals to stay updated on all Ashley's latest projects. And Ashley, is there any other websites or any other way that you want people to reach out to you?
Yeah, so they can actually find me on podcasts at Real Estate Rookie Podcast. And also we have a Real Estate Rookie YouTube. And we also have a Real Estate Rookie Instagram. It's called at Bigger Pockets Rookie.
I love it. Well, I appreciate everyone's time today. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and leave us a review on the podcast. We really appreciate that. And we'll see everyone on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks for listening. If you have questions about the information we've covered or would like to discuss mortgage financing for your situation, you can reach Robert Weinberg by visiting www.robgw.com.